Apparently, we've reached the point where using an M dash is evidence that you used AI. An M dash, a punctuation mark. So I guess Agatha Christie has some explaining to do, which might be difficult considering she died in 1976. I'm joking, obviously, but only kind of, because there is a growing obsession online with trying to figure out whether authors are using AI. And I understand where it came from. There are legitimate concerns about AI-generated books, undisclosed AI use, copyright originality, and people just pumping out low-effort books as quickly as possible. And I am not here to defend that. We've all seen examples floating around online of books containing passages that look suspiciously like raw chatbot output. If your published novel contains something that sounds like, "Certainly, here is the revised chapter in a more emotional tone," then yeah, we have a problem. If you're going to outsource your novel to a robot, apparently proofreading is still part of the job description. But there is a huge difference between finding actual evidence of AI use and deciding someone must have used AI because their writing sounds like ChatGPT or because an AI detector spits out a percentage. That is where I think we have gone too far. There are now entire conversations online about supposed AI tells, M dashes, certain metaphors, words like delve or very symmetrical sentences, or even constructions like, "It wasn't anger, it was fear." Apparently, the machines now own all of those too. People have even pointed to Agatha Christie passages as a pretty funny counterexample because her writing contains some of the same stylistic choices that people now confidently identify as AI. Again, she died in the 70s. The obvious problem is that AI learned from human language. Of course, AI writing contains patterns that human beings also use. The machine did not invent M dashes, metaphors, dramatic sentence structures. We wrote like this first. So if your logic is ChatGPT does this, therefore any writer who does this must be using ChatGPT, you have the whole thing backwards. Then we get to the AI detectors, where people suddenly become forensic scientists. Somebody copies a paragraph into a detector. It says 82% likely AI, and suddenly it's case closed. The author is guilty. Except those detectors are not magic truth machines. Even companies that make them acknowledge that they can produce false positives. Turnitin, for example, says its AI writing model can misidentify human written text and should not be used as the sole basis for taking action against someone. It even stopped showing exact scores below 20% because false positives were more common in that range. OpenAI itself released an AI text classifier in 2023 and then discontinued it because of its low rate of accuracy. The company behind ChatGPT tried to build a tool to reliably identify AI written text and said it wasn't accurate enough. And yes, there is something inherently funny about using AI to determine whether something was written by AI. We ask the robot if the robot did it. But that alone is really not the problem. The problem is that these systems are making problematic judgment based on patterns. They're not uncovering some secret digital footprint that tells them exactly how a manuscript was created. Language is messy. Human beings repeat themselves. Human beings write predictably, use cliches, weird metaphors, clean sentence structures, and formulaic phrases. Sometimes a person will naturally write something that sounds like what we have all collectively decided AI sounds like, but that doesn't make it AI. Which brings me to the Jerry Falade story, because this is where the stakes become real. And by the way, if you're still here, thank you for watching. If you're a book lover like me and you like talking about books, authors, publishing, and all the weird stuff happening in the book world, make sure you subscribe, and hopefully in the next video, we can talk about something a little bit more fun and positive. But since this is a book channel and I like to read books and talk about them on the internet, let's talk about a guy who wrote a book, Jerry Falade. If you don't recognize the name, you will probably recognize the story. Falade is a graduate student at Southern Methodist University and the author of a crime novel called Call Me, I'll Hide the Body, which is a great title. This book generated huge interest in publishing. It reportedly went through a 14-way auction in the United States, and it sold for around $2.4 million. That is enormous for any author. But then, concerns surfaced about possible AI use. According to a whole bunch of articles, an editor raised concerns during the submission process about signs of possible AI involvement. Falade's agent said that he initially gave an explanation that the agent considered clear and credible. But after another meeting, the agent felt that aspects of his account had changed and ultimately just cut ties with him. Falade has denied using AI to write the novel, and he said that his AI use was limited to research. There is also a very important detail here. According to a lot of these reports, the editor didn't use AI detection software to make its decision. So I don't want to turn this into an AI detector cost an author $2 million, because that's not what happened. But that kind of proves my broader point. I don't know whether this guy used AI to write his book. You don't know either. What we have publicly are allegations, questions about how the manuscript was created, an agent who said his confidence changed, and an author who denies using AI to write the novel. That means the responsible answer is we just don't know. But for some reason, I don't know has become an incredibly difficult sentence for people to say online. People who hate AI want suspicious writing to prove somebody cheated. But people defending an accused author may be equally tempted to assume the accusation must be completely false. Neither response is particularly useful. Sometimes someone probably did use AI. Sometimes somebody didn't. And sometimes we may never know. And if we really want to know how a manuscript was created, there are better things to look at than things like an AI detector. Draft history, version history, tracked changes, research notes, editorial correspondence, previous versions of the manuscript. Those things tell us something about the actual writing process. A detector looks at the finished product and tries to reverse engineer how it was made. That is a very difficult thing to do. And what also worries me is what this could do to actual writers. Are authors now supposed to change their natural voices because they're afraid of sounding like AI? Stop using em dashes, avoid certain words, make their prose deliberately less polished so a detector will believe a human wrote them? AI is supposed to imitate human writing. Humans should not have to stop writing like humans because AI learned how to write like us. And none of this means that readers have to be okay with AI-generated fiction. You are absolutely allowed to say, I don't want to buy a novel generated by AI. You can want disclosure. You can want publishers to establish standards and be angry if somebody represents machine-generated work as their own creative writing. Those are reasonable positions. But you cannot oppose undisclosed AI-generated fiction and also oppose baseless accusations against those authors. Those false accusations make it harder to deal with real abusers because if every em dash becomes an AI scandal, nobody is going to take the scandal seriously. So I think we need a few basic standards here. Stop treating detector percentages as verdicts. Separate suspicion from accusation. Look for actual corroborating evidence and get comfortable with uncertainty. There is a massive difference between saying, this passage makes me wonder whether AI was involved, and saying, this author used AI and here's the proof. If you're going to publicly accuse someone of lying about how they created their work, the evidence should be a lot stronger than a percentage from a website. AI-generated content has created a real trust problem. Readers don't want to feel fooled, and authors don't want to compete with mass-produced junk. Publishers don't want to spend millions on books and later discover serious questions about how those books were created. But the answer to a trust problem cannot be more irresponsible accusations. We can't complain that AI makes things up and then turn around and make things up about authors. So yes, call out AI slop when there is actual evidence. If somebody leaves, here's your rewritten chapter with improved emotional depth in chapter 12, by all means. I would also like to know about it, because that is wild. But stop treating writing quirks and em dashes and all of that stuff like you just ran DNA evidence. And in the Jerry Falade case, I don't think the responsible answer right now is he definitely used AI or he definitely didn't. We don't have enough publicly established evidence to make that declaration. Not every suspicion needs to become an accusation. Not every controversy needs an instant verdict. And not every sentence that sounds vaguely like ChatGPT was written by ChatGPT. Sometimes, and I know this is going to be a shocker, a writer wrote it. So I want to know what you think. What level of evidence would you need before you felt comfortable publicly accusing an author of using it? For me, it's leaving some of that shit in the chapters. Let me know in the comments because this is an interesting, hot topic. And if you love talking about books, authors, I guess publishing drama, and everything else happening in the book world, subscribe to this channel and I will see you in the next video.